Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Scousers Premier League panel show. Back in action after I thought I was sick last week, which I kind of was. Like the throat was brutal, so Mecca fills in for me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I got rid of it, and then it came right back. So, but thanks to Dayquil, I'm well and alive and in action. Lot to talk about. We got Glenn here with Brentford, Shay with Villa, and Alex with Fulham. I think Jake might be joining us shortly as well. And I know Jay did send a video talking about the Chelsea perspective of like the Brentford game that we'll get to. But a lot to talk about, quite the week over here. So we'll do the usual. We'll kind of go game by game real quick, address your guys' games, our games over here. And then I do want to kind of pick your brains on some of the happenings around the league. So let's start with match week 16 over here. Arsenal 0, Everton 0. Well, as you guys can see, Alan is not here. So
convenient, Alan.
So we knew this was going to happen. I guess let me ask you guys this, though. I was going to ask him this, but games like this where I don't know, I didn't get to watch this. That's way too freaking early. Well, actually, it was actually the same time as Liverpool too. I think maybe there was like a 15 half an hour difference or something like that. Glenn, did they just not get enough corner kicks, or this team has to find other ways to score goals? Otherwise, this is what's going to happen. And another week where Liverpool loses points and Arsenal cannot gain.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I had the same conundrum as you, except not being a fan of Liverpool, of course, because I think they kicked off at the same time. I think this kicked off the weekend for us, and we had the option on Peacock of Liverpool, Fulham, among other games, and Arsenal, Everton. And it was funny. I wasn't sure which one to go for. I thought, both could be solid games, but I had the sense that Fulham would be more entertaining. I imagine, like probably a lot of fans that of the Premier League, that Sean Dyche would set up deep block, defend. And Arsenal haven't been as fluent going forward. So that panned out the way we expected, right? I haven't seen the highlights because there probably wasn't too much to dig into, but it sounds like from the reports, right, that obviously Arsenal were frustrated. I'm glad we had a thrilling game, which we'll get onto with Fulham, with Fulham Liverpool, because that was, I think, like the pinnacle of the Premier League is games like that where it's thrilling for the whole 90 minutes. And this sounded like it was the antithesis of that, which was Arteta being outmaneuvered by a very experienced, very wily manager. And of course, Everton at home, that's a couple of points drop for Arsenal. That's going to be frustrating. And as you said, Liverpool dropped points as well, I would say, against harder opposition. Fulham have been really impressive this season. I really enjoy watching them. But again, that's a great opportunity to make up 2 points on them, and they failed to do it. So yeah, really frustrating for them. And it's not quite clicking, is it, going forward for them? I don't quite know what it is at the minute, but the goals aren't there. And what most Arsenal fans I know would say is that we just need to sign a forward. And that's been the blind spot for Arteta for years now, is you just need an Ivan Toney like forward who will just get in the box, will cause problems, and will score simple goals. And they don't have that. And Havertz, Jesus, that's not the answer to 20-odd goals a season. So that seems to be a weak link for them.
And they signed Jesus and stuff like that, Shay, but it feels like, I mean, look, you can say, and we made fun of them for weeks, right? Like, corner kick FC and set piece FC and stuff like that. But games like this, I mean, they still took 8 corners, to be fair. But once you defend those, is it like just Everton playing good D, or is it kind of like an ongoing problem with Arsenal? I really, apart from that West Ham game, which was like a circus, I don't remember a lot of Arsenal goals from open play in recent history.
It's like how Glenn said, they haven't been able to find that striker, and they've been doing makeshift the last couple of years. I mean, Havertz wasn't the biggest goal scorer at Chelsea either, so like they knew what they were getting when they signed him. And with Jesus, I don't know, like, he showed promise in the very beginning when he first joined Arsenal after City, but it's like they said, they need the Ivan Toney. I mean, I hate to say it, as bad as Calvert-Lewin's been, but like that kind of striker, somebody that's a target forward, basically, that where they can pump the ball into him. They're going to score. But how you said, with set pieces, your typical Sean Dyche, they just defend. So, like, if you get 8 in a match and you can't score in one, all Everton's going to do is, like, yes, we'll take that every single time because we're probably going to outmatch you in the set piece play. I mean, it showed with Pickford being the man of the match for that one. So we'll see. Maybe this January they'll actually spend the money and buy a striker. I don't know who they'll go after. I mean, Tony's probably not doing too hot in the Saudi Arabian League, so they may come and buy him for cheap or take him on a extended loan.
It almost like makes it look like, Alex, that they do need to make a move, right? Because if you looked at it earlier, I mean, early in the season, as we entered the season, when they were one of the favorites, along with like City, to run for the title, it was assumed they would be battling each other. We were seeing how deep Arsenal was, and they added quality and stuff like that. So did they just add quality in the wrong places, or it's just not clicking as it should?
I mean, maybe both. And I've been laughing the past couple of months of thinking of Arsenal have been kind of the champion in waiting. And if and when City falter, Arsenal have been right there. And then, of course, this is a year where City are faltering and Liverpool is just blasting away the league at this point. So it is kind of ironic. I feel bad. You almost feel bad for Arsenal fans. But yeah, I think that has been a problem. I think if Fulham, who are not shipping goals, but Fulham don't keep clean sheets, and you can only unlock one off of a set piece, that does say something, especially with the way, like you said, Marco Silva wants to play. And then if you're not going to score more than one corner kick against a team like Fulham, a team like Everton away, who are going to put all 11 guys just kind of in a wall in front of the goal, you're not going to score. I don't know. I think it's crying out for Arsenal way overpaying for a striker in January. And this is how clubs can make their budget up right now. A team like Brighton with Evan Ferguson, who's like kind of surplus right now, and Fulham, folks on Fulham's side have talked about like he could be exactly what Fulham need. I don't know if Arsenal would be desperate's the wrong word, but willing to do that kind of move. But yeah, they're going to overpay for somebody, and it either works out and they get back in the league hunt, or it doesn't, and they finish 4th or 5th, and it's a disaster for them. So.
I mean, like Sir Z says, he does win the Community Shield, so there's that.
Not even that. They even had Sterling. Like until he just said that, I completely forgot. Like he hasn't even played. That was a waste of a loan move and money spent. So like you have somebody that scored goals. I mean, I know he's not at what he was, but they don't even use him. Like surely he can't be any worse than Martinelli at this point. So. It's just a waste. I have not
seen much of him. I mean, like you're saying, Shay, because he hasn't done anything. I know Ellen complains about Sterling all the time, but I have not seen him playing for. I'll be honest, because Arsenal is not a fun team to watch play. I'm not turning them on just to watch their game or anything like that, because I just don't feel like it's going to be a lot of excitement going on. I'm not, a set piece thing guy that I'm going to be like, let me watch some corner kicks or something like that. But yeah, what did you guys make of this, by the way, when he was asked about, by the way, yes, Ryan says he did see Shea. He was famous. You should have been holding a sign like I was on American Scouser or something, like that's what I was hoping for. But
send us some merch submission. We'll wear it.
That was a picture from the Toronto meetup a couple years ago, so I don't know.
Oh, really? Okay.
Probably my dad.
What did you guys make of that? Like when he was asked today, basically they were asking him about the cup and does it put more pressure because you got to get trophies despite being competitive and challenging for titles and stuff like that. And the Charity Shield thing is, I don't even know what the hell it's called now. The Community Shield, is that what it is now? I mean, it's like it's one of those things, Glenn, that's fans care if their team is in it. And I mean, I know when Liverpool is not in that, I was like, oh shit, that was today kind of a thing is usually what I get into. What do you make of that when Arteta says that? Because to me, I know Alan didn't want to take it like that on Discord, but to me, when a manager says that, it's not a whole lot different than Ten Hag saying like, things are good, we're winning trophies. What's the problem around here?
Yeah, Ten Hag's a funny comparison because he won a couple of real trophies, didn't he? That's the difference there. Real cups that take multiple rounds of games to win. It's a glorified friendly. It's just a way to kick off the season. It's still effectively feels like a preseason game from a neutral's perspective. The tempo's never quite right. Usually get a couple of screamer goals or something. I remember Cole Palmer might have scored an amazing one for City a couple of years ago. But there's an occasional moment of brilliance. But when all said and done, it's more of an exhibition match, and that's how it's approached. That's how it's portrayed to, as you said, any fan of a team that's not involved, then that's the way you're going to interpret it. And all I see it as is a great bit of momentum to start a season. You win it, you start the season on the front foot. You put in a poor performance, you start the season on the back foot. But in terms of a trophy, I mean, Yeah, it's quite laughable. And I mean, yeah, if people are gonna criticize the Carabao Cup, the League Cup that Brentford are in the quarterfinal of tomorrow with a very hard game against Newcastle. I mean, people knock that enough, let alone an actual kind of single game that no one really cares about. So I think he's clutching at straws a little bit there.
Yeah, I thought it was like, and Jake is in the house, all festive and everything. So we'll get to the next game, I guess, where we're gonna now start talking about some terminations as well. Wolves 1, Ipswich 2. I mean, Shay, let's start with this. I mean, we talked about this. Did he get a raw deal? I guess at some point you have to make changes. But the thing is, I talked about this on our podcast as well. I listened to his post-match press conference, I think from the week before. And he went for a couple of minutes talking about, how much players they've sold and they're replacing with young. It's going to take time. And, people should not expect like miracles kind of a deal. And to a neutral, I'm like, I hear you, man. But if you're a Wolves fan, you probably don't want to hear that. And more importantly, if you're a Wolves player, you probably don't want to hear that.
Yep. No, like it's definitely it hurt them selling off the best players. I mean, two of them, one was Chelsea, I think two was Chelsea, one was City. But like if you don't spend the money like we talked about earlier and don't replace them with at least quality players, you're gonna struggle, especially when you're a team that's known as playing free and flowing soccer. Because like Wolves at one point where they're always in the top, they're a really good team. They always would play really well, and I just feel like with them losing that quality, they haven't been able to get to that spot. And like how you said, with it being young players, you don't want your coach to be negative all the time, but I think he had enough because he saw from the ownership they weren't going to do it, and it's just like how Cersei said, they were imploding, and I don't think anybody could save it at this point. It's almost just, hey, steer the ship enough to where you're not getting fully embarrassed. Don't pull a Derby, County and be the worst team in the league, but maintain and just try to come back up next year and see what you can do with the talent that you have.
I mean, Jake, do you think with the change now, I know Vitor Pereira's name, I think, was thrown for that job. And we talked about this on the Premier League show yesterday with Gally that just went on American Scouser today. Because I'm familiar with him from Fenerbahce and stuff like that. But regardless of who replaces him, do you think a manager change will be enough to get? Because they still have some good players on that team, but they're like a really frustrated bunch.
Yeah, I think it'll be enough. It obviously depends on who they go with. But if you look at their, place in the table, the statistics that really stand out compared to the teams around them is both the goals for and against. They score a lot more than those teams, but they are conceding so much more than everyone else. And I think it's easier to bring in a manager that can shore up a back line than it is to, bring in a manager and try to say like, hey, find goals out of nowhere, out of like a team that has no attacking prowess. So I think if they bring in someone that can work with the defenders that they have and, limit it to, one goal a game, they have that attacking power where they're gonna get enough points if they can just shore up that defense just enough. So yeah, I back them to pick someone that's going to do that, and it just takes like 2 games under a new manager with that bounce to get, if they get 4 points off the next 2 games after they appoint a manager. I mean, that'll be enough to springboard them up and maybe get some momentum going. And I said 2 months ago that I wasn't worried about Wolves. I am worried about Wolves now, but I think they still have a good chance of staying up. And so the manager appointment obviously will be huge.
I mean, they're not. We'll get to them as well. I mean, they're not in Southampton territory where it's going to be, they're 9 points behind, I think, from safety. But when you only got them 5 points in 16, 9 points is a lot. So you got to put that into perspective. But let's get to the next one. Again, a manager talk over here. I was told on our channel by Anand on Friday that Ruud knows what he's doing. He's real good because he won 2 games against Leicester United. So he gets the Leicester job. And I think he got 2 decent scores. But is this, Alex, is this reality setting back in? Ultimately, Leicester City is Leicester City. What do you think of how Ruud will do over there? I think, anywhere going to. I mean, Liverpool, they're like got a draw there at Newcastle. St. James Park is always a tough place to play.
Yeah.
So there's no shame in losing over there. Maybe shame in losing 4-0, but how do you see his future at Leicester?
It's funny. I think that was my Tonali's pick, was Leicester to get a result at Newcastle, so that went well. I think for some reason I just have this belief in Leicester. I think Jamie Vardy is a dog, and he has the ability to essentially single-handedly drag that team across the finish line. And they're just barely out now, but it's going to their teeth. But I don't know. It's one of those situations where I don't necessarily agree with a midseason firing like that unless there's things that we don't know about to bring Nistelrooy in. I think the Wolves one is different for me, where to go back to that, if you heard his comment in the press conference at the end where he was like, the second goal is on the players. I had them in the right positions and they didn't execute. And when you hear that from a manager, it's done. Like anybody in the locker room is going to say, what are you asking us to do? Like, so that is a different situation. I agree with that one. Most in-season firings like this with Steve Cooper and all these guys, Russell Martin as Saints, I don't think it's the right move. And so I don't know. I for the sake of Leicester, I hope it doesn't hurt them. But you have to look and say, okay, is Van Nistelrooy going to do significantly better than Steve Cooper? Or is this just a caretaker and you hope that there are 3 teams worse than you? Because what a negative place to be in as a fan of like, it feels like we have to do some things, so let's just fire the manager and hope that we get a bounce is not a fun place to be at. So hopefully it works out for them. And again, Jamie Vardy's a dog, and I would back him against any of the other bottom 3. But yeah, not great.
I think it goes back to like what Jake was saying too. Like if you're a team and if you're going to fight for relegation, if you can get goals, you're going to be in decent shape compared to those who cannot. So they do have that, and I don't think they'll be like in danger of it. But I am not, calling Rude the next Mourinho or anything like that. That's, like some people did after like 3 games. The whole new manager smell thing, people have to understand a bit better, I think. Liverpool 2, Fulham 2. I mean, what the hell was that game? It was quite an exciting game. I'm sure for the neutral, for you guys, it was like really fun to watch. Honestly, even as a Liverpool fan, it was fun to watch. I was more happy. I was more devastated from the Newcastle draw because it felt like that was a game you won and you gave away. Whereas this one, it was a lot of fights, and we could have won that game still. But let me ask you this, Alex. Like, how do you take that? I know you said, like, at the end of the day, if I gave you a point before they kicked off at Anfield, you're taking it and running with it. But being up 1-0 and being up a man, did just Fulham kind of like bottle that, or how do you see it?
No, I wouldn't say bottled it. I think I told some folks at the bar we were watching, I kind of like 2/3 being serious, maybe a third joking of like up a man, up 1. I'd still take a point out of this because with essentially this shows the gulf in quality between the top of the table and the mid-table clubs, and that Liverpool can essentially switch to a back 3 with no one covering it, keep the midfield as the same, and just roll on. And that's essentially what happened, is they were able to just kind of continue playing just without a left back. So they're not a whole lot. And then when you bring the subs on, it costs more than Fulham's entire squad. So like, going into this, especially at Anfield, where the longer it was kept at 1-0 and the longer than it was kept at 1-1, the crowd, you could kind of feel, even on the telecast, you could watch it. The crowd really was in it the entire time. And you could just feel like this. I don't feel comfortable, even up 2-1, even when you scored, it was like, this is going to be a long, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was. This is going to be a long 20 minutes to see this out. So I don't want to feel negative about it of, we should have scored all 3, or like, what a bummer. But obviously, up 1 and up a man, you'd love to take all 3. But at the end of the day, I still was saying, like, I'm okay with a point from this. It's more than you can hope for going in. And, Liverpool, as a Liverpool fan, you've got to be incredibly proud with how they fought to equalize twice, essentially. Incredibly proud of that effort.
I think that was my thing. Like, if you turn that game on, and you didn't know what was going on, you would never tell that Liverpool was playing a man down. It just that took some extra running from people like Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones and stuff like that. But the thing that we talked about that I know, like, we admired the most is how like Slot was able to kind of tweak things, and that just didn't sub and put a left back in and take a midfielder or an attacker out or something like that. Like how somebody usually gets sacrificed for the guy to be replaced or something like that. But I mean, I guess that was like the plus of it. I mean, seeing Jota come back, Elliott come back, and all that kind of was, overall pluses. Because honestly, when it was 1-0 and then Robertson got red, I was like, holy shit, this is going to be a long day. So that was definitely, I was kind of like proud to see the fight in them. Glenn, I mean, what is there to be learned for both teams, I guess? I mean, we kind of already knew. We talked about Fulham before. And I really think this is like goes back. I feel like Fulham is a really good team, but sometimes very naive and gets lost in the moment. Like when things are going well, they're like, oh, it's going to go well like this for another like 80 minutes. And it doesn't work like that in the Premier League. There was like a 5 to 10 minutes gap when we got the red card and Slot is trying to shift people around. And you could tell everybody was a little lost. They're trying to adjust. And that's when a team, Sergi is asking why is Fulham not in the top 6. I think that's when that team has to capitalize and get the second and, put like step on the throat.
Yep.
And it just felt like Fulham was like,
because at 2-0, the crowd's out of it. At 2-0, down a man in the 30th, it's like, okay, it's over. But yeah.
What do you make of it, Glenn? Like, what was the learns?
That's it. I mean, that was the period of the game I was gonna draw attention to. It was that spell, right? Just as you said. And there was this moment where Fulham smelt blood, where they were, energetic, they were fiery. Liverpool, as you said, there was 6 and 7s at the back, and everyone just looked a little bit confused. They were adjusting to going down to 10 men, and it was Liverpool looked so vulnerable in a way because they've been so defensively solid this season. We haven't seen much of that, have we? They've kept so many clean sheets. They've been so robust at the back. It takes a red card almost to disrupt this defense that Slot's building. It's that solid. So there was a moment, and yeah, of course, from a Fulham perspective, you want to double your lead, you want to triple your lead, you want to go into halftime 3-0 up, you want to put the game to bed then. And although they do have players who can be clinical at times, obviously we saw Harry Wilson at his best a couple of weeks ago. Really frustrating. Jimenez, it's great. I think I've said it on the show before, but feels like Fulham's this kind of rehabilitation home for kind of strewn away Premier League players.
Yeah. Misfit toys.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? I mean, you have players like Wilson or Jimenez or even Traore oiling up and running off the bench. Like he's
not as oily anymore. I don't know what happened. I guess they banned it. They must have banned it.
It's
probably ran out.
But I mean, even look at like Smith Rowe. These are players who have been kind of discarded by various levels of the Premier League table, and under your manager, who seems to be one of the most exciting prospects for a manager, who comes as somebody who's in form in the league right now, probably obviously behind Slot. Yeah, there's a lot of players. So I think looking at the team you've got, Pereira did get the goal. Just I don't quite know how he got it in, but he did. And even Iwobi. I mean, Iwobi for me embodies this new Fulham team. He looks like a baller again, and like he's everywhere. And we saw at Everton, he was kind of became a central midfielder, and the fans he was quite Marmite with the fans, but he's this engine for Fulham, and he works so hard. So when I look at this Fulham team, I see players who can score goals with Jimenez, Pereira, Iwobi, Wilson, and I think, as you said, the fact that they couldn't double that lead, and at Anfield, unless you're going to put it to bed. And hey, we've all seen games at Anfield that even 2-0, it's not over. But because Fulham have been so good, it wouldn't be like Leicester going 2-0 up or Southampton going 2-0 up. It's a team that I can trust to defend. And, you want to look at the player of the match. And I mean, Robinson, who we talked about on the show last week, was exceptional. And he's one of the best left backs in the league. And to get 2 assists in the manner in which he did, they weren't lucky. They were brilliant assists. Think about that second one, the amount of work he did to get the ball over, and for Muniz to get a beautiful finish as well. I think my takeaways were Fulham are a really, really good team, and they show no signs of slowing down. They're more than a sum of their parts, kind of like Brentford, and that's what I like about this Fulham team. And Liverpool, what determination, what grit, and if you're playing like 11 with 10 men, how good's that for the season? How great's that? I mean, it's so impressive. It was as I said earlier, what a great example of the Premier League at its best. It was thrilling for 90 minutes. 2 exciting teams.
It was too much of a basketball game, to be honest with you, than probably Slot would like. And I think that's where we missed McAllister the most. He's the one that kind of is going to slow things down. I was talking about it last week. He's kind of like that point guard that eventually calls up play and that just doesn't go to fast break nonstop kind of a thing. He's that guy. He can do one pass and slow the game down. I think we were kind of missing that, and obviously there are going to be more gaps. But definitely proud of how we turned about. Normally, I would say it's 2 points lost. On paper, this is 3 points that you should win at home. But the way we got the points and stuff like that, you still got to be happy with it. And Gravenberch apparently can play everywhere. I believe the next Premier League job opening is Silva, says Ryan.
Probably.
I don't know. I mean, at the same time, they did this. You guys did the same thing against City. If Traore finishes a couple of those chances he got when you guys were up, again, it becomes 2-0, 3-0, and maybe you put the game away. But then that's one thing I think with Fulham is that they keep the other team in the game, and then eventually, like that's how you lose points when you keep people in the Premier League.
And on that point, I think it's tough. Sometimes we think, like, everyone, when you give up a goal late, everyone says, oh, they should have put another center back on. We should have hunkered down. And then when you hunker down and inevitably a team like Liverpool is able to pull that apart and get in and score a goal, you're like, we shouldn't have put the extra center back on.
Yep.
So it really is one of those, like, kind of if it works, it works. And I think the idea with Marcus Silva is, like, if we just continue to play and make them uncomfortable, I will score, and they won't get comfortable enough to score. And most of the time that works until it doesn't. And a team like Liverpool, who is just good enough to break you down, even with 10, they're just good enough to do that. And that's why I said a point's a point, because, like, at the end of the day, if this happened against Newcastle or Brentford, someone close in the table to us, I'd be significantly more upset. Or even Arsenal at this point, a team that's struggling to score, significantly more upset. But the fact that you can watch Liverpool and be like, I don't know how they're down. I don't know what's going on here. This doesn't make any sense. It makes you sleep a little better at night.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think I really like Silva. I liked him when he was in Everton, even though he was at Everton. But I just don't know if he's like a manager who can manage like a top 4 team or anything like that either. I think he's better at getting more out of people as opposed to being handed a quality thing.
A lot of Spurs chatter in the chat here, Jake. But I think the thing with Silva is that if Fulham can push on this year and snag that last European slot, if it slips to 8 for the Conference League or 7 for Conference Europa, that is a significantly higher likelihood Silva stays and kind of continues this project. And because that's what he's talked about, Fulham is like continuing the project of Fulham. The ownership support is there, the stuff is in place. But at some point, for a manager like him with ambitions of proving himself back in the Premier League, if you're not going to be playing in Europe, it's kind of like you only have a certain number of years you can manage, and you can't just keep managing in the mid-table. You got to make the jump. So it's a big year for Fulham. If they can bust through, then it changes a lot of things. So you can maybe keep a guy like Robinson. You can keep some people with European play that you just can't otherwise.
That's true too. The chat is sending him to Spurs. You taking him, Jake?
No. There's only a handful of people I would take at Spurs right now. I like Postecoglou. I'm still on board. So no, I didn't love his cameos at Watford and Everton. So I think he's got to do a little bit more for me to prove that he's a top 6 manager. You don't see kind of the big English teams poaching the lower English teams managers as often as of recent. Obviously, Chelsea's manager is an exception, but I don't know. I don't see him at Spurs, and I won't have him.
Hope not.
No. Yeah, I mean, Gravenberch was, especially this game, I thought that was like exceptional. Like, I mean, to be able to be like, hey, why don't you play a little bit of center back as well, to a guy that was like an outcast last year and stuff like that, and how he builds play and stuff. And this is why, when fans want transfers and they wanted, everybody wanted like 4 freaking defensive midfielders signed, and Slot comes in and makes this guy he's probably has to be in the conversation of like the team of the season or something like that for that position. And that says a lot for a guy who normally does not play that really. But let's get to the next one. Shay, all you. Forest 2, Villa 1. Is this like how basically whenever there's Champions League, you're going to see some drop in Villa kind of a deal? Or what do you make of it? Because Villa had like a bad spell that looked like they were bouncing back. What do you make of it?
I think the last time I was on the podcast, same thing. We were on a slump because the European matches were, just kicking the ass at the players of just fatigue. And same thing again. I mean, no fault at Forest. They are a great team, and they have been playing lights out. So this was just a match that were, 2 of the teams that are on the rise. But I'll say Villa F that one because literally 2 goals in the span of like 2.5 minutes was just utter embarrassment. So I honestly think it's just, we've needed another center back for Diego Carlos to replace him or, not let him be the start every time. But with Mings being out for like 2.5 years, I mean, it was a year, but like it felt like 2. It's tough. I just think they need to shape it up a little bit and toughen it out because these are professionals at the end of the day. But it is what it is. We're rocking and rolling in the Champions League. So I don't know if Emery has said, hey, this is full focus, just maintain top 10, which I said earlier I will take in a heartbeat because, it's the Champions League at the end of the day. If you win it, you're in it, just like how Chelsea won it a few years ago. But
so what is on the wish list for you for like January? Like, what does this team have to do to be able to kind of keep going on the Champions League, but be still in the position because you want to come back and you just don't want to be, like one and done in Champions League in Europe.
I mean, I think the injuries have definitely hit us a lot just because that, if you look on paper, we have a really solid midfield, but with Jacob Ramsey not being able to stay healthy the whole time, bringing in another midfielder. Honestly, at this point, I think Douglas Luiz absolutely hates Italy and does not like being at Juventus. Somehow bring him back for nothing would be a huge transfer in. But I think they definitely have to bring him a center back. And we've had to have a right back for years. Like, we've been needing that for a long time. Matty Cash. I mean, I love the guy, but he is obviously mistake prone. So they just need to either find somebody that they can use because we bought Maatsen. I thought it was a great pickup, but the kid never plays, so I don't really know what Emery's doing.
Why does he never play?
I think Luka Dean has just kind of had a resurgence and cemented his spot. So you just.
So how bad is Maatsen? I guess it's a follow-up question. You're losing to Luka Dean.
I literally just think Luka Dean somehow he saw the message and decided to show that he was at one point a top left back in the world. So I would say that's what it is. And then, I know this is looking to the future, but I just have a feeling Duran will not be at Villa either this year or next year because somebody's going to come for him, and you got to take the money for him.
Yeah, I mean, Rosa says Maatsen was the man of the match according to Sofa Score. But Sofa Score scores really baffled the hell out of me. I was looking at the Fulham game, for example. I'm like, how are they coming up with these? I know there's it's like Coca-Cola. There's like a secret formula how they come up with that thing at the end, but it's not as good as Coca-Cola, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, I really thought when they signed Maatsen, I was like, oh, that could be interesting. And then when you never see him, or like maybe it wasn't that interesting after all. I know somebody had this as their Tonali's pick. Brighton 1, Palace 3. Was it Io or somebody, I think, in the show had it last week? That was kind of a shocker, really. And that's, I think, why Brighton, there's a lot of like Brighton top 4 talk and stuff like that. And I think this is one reason why I don't see them ending up being there. All right, one of the big ones for the week over here. City 1, United 2. Jake, what the hell is going on? As Pep scratching himself to death. I mean, really, that I watched only the last. Fenerbahce was being tortured by Fenerbahce majority of the game, except the last 15, 20 minutes is when I got to watch this. And honestly, caught a lot of action in those 20 minutes. But what is there to be learned from this game?
I mean, it's very similar to how they have been playing. They've just been capitulating, and it's unprecedented. And I'm not mad about it, I like seeing new blood at the top. Sure, do I wish it was Tottenham and not Liverpool? But it's I can't put my finger on it. It's kind of baffling the form that they're in. But yeah, the first thing I thought of when they scored the equalizing goal, and you see Pep's hands go straight to his head, like, oh, don't hurt yourself, come on. But I didn't see any scratch marks this time, so I think he came out okay, other than his pride, obviously. But yeah, it's just, I know they have injuries, but I said it before, they have a deep enough bench where this amount of injuries should not be so catastrophic. And I mean, it all started after Pep signed his new deal, and it's just, I mean, they're not going to fire him, but it's so bad. And I'm mesmerized, and I love to see it at the same time. It's great television. Give me more of it. Inject it straight into my veins. But no, I can't give you a reason.
Yeah, it's weird. He should almost go out to games with like dishwashing gloves or something like that until this run is over. Because it's
little gloves you give babies, little mittens.
I mean, here's the thing, Alex. I don't know if this is super simplifying, but there are times where the team, like when you're winning all the time, I mean, I don't know, as you play, I'm sure we've been on teams that win all the time and teams that don't win all the time, kind of a deal. And there's a thing to be when you're winning all the time, even when you're down or things are not going well, there's a certain confidence about you as you play. You're like, it's going to work. It's going to happen eventually. So you kind of play calm and there's a momentum thing going that way. But when you lose all the time, even when you start a game really good and you're like, this is one of those games, we're going to win this. The moment something goes wrong, you're like, oh, shit, here we go again. Yeah. Is it just oversimplifying their situation right now where like that 3-0 to 3-3 game, I think is the perfect example for that. But when it became 1-1, 6 months ago, I'd be like, City can still win this game is what I would say. When it became 1-1, the only thought I had was, you know what, United, I bet you United will get another one out of this.
That's a good point you make, because I think that's what I was thinking when you were talking with Jake about, is that like there's this, I don't know if mental weakness is too strong a way to put it, but that's something you just haven't seen from City under Pep. They're killers. They are killers. And in the macro sense of the season, right, where the games are counting down and they've only got 2, 3, 4, 5 to make a move, every single year they have made that move on the macro level, and they've done it on the micro level within game to enable that. And this year they haven't done any of that. Almost every time they've had a chance or needed to really dig and close it out, it seems like they just haven't. And I think that, like you talked about, Commissioner, that's contagious and it spreads, and it is a real cancer in the locker room that Pep's got to figure out a way to rid them of that, because it does start to creep in of a here we go again. Or even if it's not a here we go again, you start to say, I'm not going to think here we go again. I'm going to dig deeper and I'm going to make a better play, which is almost worse because then you're out of position, you're rushing. So, and I think I said this to Io last week, is that I think United are lucky this game was not played at Old Trafford. Old Trafford, United being down a goal for 90 minutes at Old Trafford, that place would have turned unbelievably toxic. And it would have been, there's no way they have any energy after just hearing people boo at them for 90 minutes to then make this run at the end. So I said to Io, I was like, would you rather this match be at the City than that United? And he said, absolutely. I think that's 100%. I think that came to play. I don't think United, after hearing it for 90 minutes, losing, would have had that boost. And City, I don't know. Yeah, it's a complacency. Like Rosa says, it's just that lack of a killer instinct, which is so weird because this is the first year you've seen it. Every year we say at the midseason, this might be the year that City blows it, and they never do, and they are now.
And I know, like, the squad is aging, and I think Rosa is right. Some of those guys were never, like, Alvarez left, and they didn't really, I mean, I know they were with Silvio, but it's not the same thing. There's really no official backup for, like, Haaland and stuff like that. And Haaland, I mean, it looked like he was going to have, like, 150 goals after, like, match week 4 or something like that. And the thing with Haaland is if he's not scoring, he's not contributing. I know that's oversimplifying, and you're like, what else do you need? He's a striker. But no, like, he's not creating for other people. If he's not scoring, it's almost like you're playing with 10 men now. Like, the way he plays, his interplay is not all that. I mean, Glenn, aside from the squad aging, I still find, I mean, these guys did not age 10 years in like 6 months. Is it because, I mean, could it be that these guys know more than we do in terms of the 115, 130, 840 charges they got going? And it's kind of affecting the mindset in the background. Like, they know more than we do. And that's why I just find it really hard to believe that they, like, suddenly in 6 months became zero confidence, zero talents, just like floundering left and right out there.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's hard to say about the Chargers, isn't it? Because obviously we're not sure what is going on behind the scenes. And honestly, I think they just want to win on the football field over 90 minutes every week, regardless of that. I don't think that's going to affect a winning mentality. I think City have made it a habit of winning for years now, as we've all seen, and disrupting that. And, suddenly losing's a habit. It's really hard to shake. And you're used to seeing it from teams like Southampton and Wolves or whoever else, and Brentford have had huge spells in the Premier League where we've just lost every week for a couple of months. And we can kind of dig in because we know that, okay, maybe there's some hard fixtures or maybe we have some injuries. I think maybe what's confusing Pep and frustrating him is kind of like the point you made, which is when you look at this team on paper and when you have training with them every day each week, and when you put them out to play other teams like United who are out of form and disjointed, you do expect this team, regardless of form or age, to have enough quality at the end of the day to not lose however many they've lost in a row. I think this is what's puzzling. It's like Yeah, the reason we're talking about this age thing and these recruitment issues, which I totally agree with, is just because it feels like they've saved all these losses, which they could have incrementally built up over a couple of years. They've just all happened over November, over December. It's just like the wheels have come off so suddenly and so intensely. I think that's where we're all looking a little bit puzzled. For me, from the outside looking in, I do think, complacency, as Rosa said in the comments, vis-a-vis recruitment is huge. I mean, there's just not the depth that you would expect City to have, which means, when there are players who are out of form, it's hard to rotate them. When there are injuries, it's hard to bring in players. You kind of end up rushing players back, like we saw, Spurs do with their centre backs last week. They rushed them back and they both got injured again. It's quite clear that, Kevin De Bruyne is not quite.
Shots, Jay.
It's true though. I mean, that was a manager under pressure, and that's why he did that. And it was very different this week, as we'll shortly get to. But when I look at this team, and you're like, look at that 11, like who is in form right now, who is playing their best. I mean, Walker's a liability. Haaland's totally off the boil. Foden, I think Mark Flecken probably has as many goal involvements as him this season at the minute. It's brutal, and the players they have brought in to replace them. You look at Doku, you look at Nunez. Look at Savinho, you look at Grealish being played in the wrong position. You look at all these players they brought in over the last year. None of them have really reached the level of, at their best, Foden, Haaland, Diaz, Gvardiol. These aren't better quality replacements. In my opinion, they're all downgrades. And a lot of them aren't really pet players. I don't understand why they did buy Doku and Grealish, especially if you're going to play him out of position for a couple of years. Why would you buy Calvin Phillips, who did an amazing job for Leeds, if you're going to essentially berate him and excommunicate him and then just, toss him off, toss him out the window? Like, what's that going to do to improve the squad in the long run? Because that's a hole, right? This Rodri hole is so key. And because they haven't filled that, and Alvarez, they're not scoring as many goals as they want to. Well, suddenly Alvarez is a huge hole in the team. And selling Cole Palmer is incredible, right? It's just like he is, as I say every week on this show, like the player I like watching the most in the Premier League. It's like recruitment's been such a failure. Yes, you don't expect it to reach this point, because I still think that 11 is a top 2-3 11 in the Premier League. That's why we're so puzzled, because it doesn't quite make sense. And it just feels like their decline's accelerated at a pace no one was really expecting. Can you imagine looking at it if you told one of us 6 months ago that the teams there'd be sandwiched between would be Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth? If you told us that, we'd be like, what is going on in this Premier League? Like, what is happening? So it's just, it really is bizarre from the outside looking in.
And you can tell, like, Pep is struggling with it, Shay, and he's not used to. I mean, I don't buy this. He's a checkbook manager and stuff like that. I mean, yes, he needs a big checkbook, but there's a lot of managers with big checkbooks that don't win shit. So he obviously knows what to do with the big checkbook at the end of the day, and he does get into win, but maybe rebuilding is not his thing. And, his fault has always been tinkering. It almost looks like he's in a panic mode now. He's just trying to put pieces all over the place and nothing is working. So what do you expect? Because it's hard for him to bring people in with the Chargers. And I know this summer, for example, a lot of the players they were interested in, they wanted something in there saying, hey, if these Chargers come down, I'm out of here for free kind of a deal. And that kind of like eliminates them. Do you see them making moves, or is this just going to kind of like be the rest of the season? They're going to end up, they still have enough talents, but do you think this keeps going like this, or they do turn it around in a couple of weeks?
I mean, I'd say they'll turn around because, like I've said, this squad still is top 2 in the league. It's just they're in a really bad form, and he's not developing the players that he is known for. Like you said, he needs a checkbook to get what he wants, but when he buys the players, he gets them for pretty decent prices if they aren't like the full superstars, and he'll turn them into superstars. Like how he said with Alvarez, the kid came from the Argentinian league out of nowhere. He turned him into a top striker, but they didn't replace him with the like-for-like talent. And I think that's what his issue is. He thinks that what the players that they brought in should do it. But they're not the same players, because you're not going to be able to find the same gem and same type of player over and over. How you said earlier with Haaland's not getting the ball, like I love him to death, but he is utterly useless when he doesn't touch the ball. So like that is also having a negative effect on the team, because they're sitting here playing. He's not helping them out, being the target man, letting them run onto it. He's just sitting there pouting. Oh, didn't get the ball. It's time to move on. I agree with one of the comments that are on there. How they probably should have sold KDB when you had the chance. He's aging out at this point. You could have gotten something, even if it's 40 million at this point, to bring in 2 extra players that are younger. Because I do think with the looming allegations on them, they're going to have issues. Because, like how you said, no player is going to want to come if they're not going to have a release clause or something in their contract saying, "Hey, if you guys go under, we're not staying." Even though they would clearly be right back up, they would probably dominate the championship, and it'd honestly be impressive just to see.
It'd be fun to watch.
It'd be
I
fun.
don't know how many people will be committed to City to go through that. You know what I mean? Like, how many players at City will be committed enough to say, you know what? When it happened to Juventus, there was like a whole group that stuck with them.
Do it. That's where the loyalty comes into play, and half these players aren't true City players. Yeah. I think Foden was one. Cole Palmer, I don't know if he came truly through the academy, from the get-go, or they bought him somewhere and then he made that way up. But a lot of these players have never come or been true City people or fans, I should say. So, I see them all leaving if they want to because they're not going to have any loyalty. And then Pep signing this long contract, he's going to dip if they do go under. And the thing is, they're going to have all this money that they're not going to be able to use because I guarantee you they'll be on some kind of ban. So you're not going to be able to hire a new manager to do something like that. The players that they have have to be all youth kids or, whoever stays to keep it out. And then on the thing of Kyle Walker, I watched that game. Dude, he's such a punk right now. I'm you've been one of the most consistent right backs, and now he's just you can tell. I think he's getting washed. So his speed is going. So he has to make excuses, and it's like I said, they're starting to age out, and I think they realize that they may have messed up by not replacing them a little bit sooner or having that backup to replace them right now. And then if they did have the backups, they've sold them all for nothing. And they're all thriving in other places and they didn't probably put a buyback clause in. So it's a smorgasbord of things, I would say, but I love to see it. Cause like I said, it's fantastic. We finally may see a new champion this year and City and Pepper and, utter disbelief. And, he's over here. He's never had to deal with this his entire career. I've said it a bunch of times. I do think he is one of the best managers, but he's never had it hard. He's been at Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and City, 3 of the most wealthy teams in the entire world that have had the best players. So, now that it's actually, starting to affect him, he's starting to freak out a little bit, and he doesn't know what to do.
And there's a difference between building. He's had to build things, implement his style, get his own players. But there's a difference between building and rebuilding. And he never had to really rebuild. And I think that's what we're going to end up seeing if he can do it or not. AJ says, happy I found some Americans that like football. We do have a Discord channel, but you will be facing a huge majority of Liverpool fans because it's American Scousers fan channel. I am posting the link in there if you do want to hop on, but be ready for some red homerness going on, sometimes to the extremes that I can't even handle. But we do have a lot of channels where we talk general Premier League, different world leagues, World Cup, you name it, movies, books. There's all kinds of weird channels in there. It's a good community, so just hop on over there. But I'm going back to Walker, by the way. I don't think Walker was ever a good defender, but when you're that freaking fast, you can be in the wrong position and catch up to the action twice. And now he's not as fast, so he just cannot catch up to the action. So, but like Shay said, long way to continue. It's always fun to watch. I want to get back to United if we have some time. I really think the whole the Rashford Garnacho thing is a gutsy move, and he did get lucky by winning the game, because if that game ends 1-0 and they don't get a goal, that's gonna that could kind of backfire. But I think it's something that we're gonna find out more about in the next couple of weeks, so it might be a topic we get to next week. So I do want to keep going with the games. Southampton 0, Tottenham 5. I swear I looked at FotMob to see the scores, and when I saw that you guys were up 3-0 or 4-0 or something, I was like, did that game start earlier? I thought it was starting the same time as the other one, kind of a thing. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like a massacre over there. And you guys get the manager fired, which was probably writing on the wall. Was that just too easy, Jake? Anything to take from that?
I mean, you could take some things. The main takeaway is that Southampton are truly terrible. It didn't really feel like we did a lot to even open them up for the first couple of goals. There were some moves in there where it's okay, we had some nice play there and earn those goals. But a couple of them, it's like, where is the Southampton defense? Like, even then they switched to a back five, and we still scored 2 more in the first half after they did that, and it's just non-existent. It was nice to have that second half as, you know, kind of just like a training exercise and a walkthrough. Neither team were really going too hard, and, you know, with the festive fixtures, it's nice to have a little break. But I'm not taking too much away from that as a Spurs fan. We always have that in us. It doesn't change the fact that we, you know, could go out and play Southampton at home later this season and lose. So it's just, you know, you take it with the Ipswich loss at home. It's just, you know, you don't know what you're going to get with Spurs. We have that in our locker against City, against Southampton. Doesn't matter who we play. We can be the best team in the Premier League or the worst team in the Premier League on any given day. So, you know, I don't take a lot from it. I think this next week's matchup is a different story.
Yeah, that should be an interesting one. I worry because I don't know which Tottenham we're going to be end up playing, so it's kind of hard to know before the game starts. But I'm hoping Slot will be able to take advantage of the fact that you guys don't have the starting center backs. But Alex, we talked about the Wolves manager job. This one seems a bit more clear cuts and writing on the wall. Like, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Not everybody can be going to Bayern after like blowing up in the freaking like Premier League like company over there. I mean, was it just a matter of time?
Yeah, this is a hard one for me too, because I don't know. And I view, especially in season firings, I think of, okay, I understand at some point you have to just pull the ripcord and because it's just not working. And maybe that's this example is it's just not working. And they see practice every day and they see more than we do. But if this feels tough for me to fire a guy like Russell right now, where, first of all, who are you going to bring in? Is Big Sam going to come save you? And at some point, you have to do kind of what Norwich did when they were going up and down every single year, was this sense of Daniel Farke is a manager. We have a project. This is a multi-year project. And the idea that we're going to go down, come back up, and then stay up is gravy, but we're planning to go down. And if we stay up, great. But you are building this multi-year thing. Saints are not a big club. And so Southampton cannot expect to just come in and walk the league. So I don't know. I hope, again, like Wolves, I hope it works out for them, but I don't know who you bring in that's going to right the ship and get Southampton with the players they have currently is going to get more out of them. This isn't a thing of Mateus Cunha and guys at Wolves who are like, they really should be higher than they are. This is just a bad team. They're just not good. And I don't know, again, unless there's more to it and they've lost the locker room and there's stuff we don't know about. I don't know what firing a manager at this stage gets you. It's kind of like the Saints are bad. They're just not a good team.
They are bad. But I guess my thing is you got to know that you're bad, right? I mean, like, you got to know you're bad and not pretend you're City and try to play like City. Because if Sean Dyche is Southampton's manager, I don't know, they probably have 8 points instead of 5 or something like that. They might not win games, but he's going to hunker down.
We give Sean Dyche a lot of shit. We give Sean Dyche a lot of shit, rightfully so. He's a football terrorist. But to his credit, he does understand when he doesn't have the horses to pack it in and just say, all right, this is what we're doing. He had an interview on I forget what podcast it was a couple years ago where he talked about that. He's like, I would love to go play like Pep. I would love to go play like all these guys. But when you don't have the guys, you can't do it. And so I do respect that for him. It changed my perspective a little bit of him. Is like,
I call him Sean Douche for a reason. I know.
No, I agree. His personality.
Here's the thing: who is going to hire Sean Douche to their team to play attacking football? Because we've never seen it, bro. Is it a coincidence that we've never seen you attack?
Hire him to steady the ship for a little bit. How you said for Big Sam, but how you said with Southampton, what they need to do, and they've gotten away from it because we've seen it for the years. They used to produce the most insane talent there for a good run. Go back.
We need players, man.
Like they need to invest in the youth academy again, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's how they made their mark on the league. I just feel like they just haven't been able to do that recently.
What's the end game for them with this? Like, they sign a manager, they still go down because they're just kind of dog water, and then they go back to the championship. Does this manager stick with them down there? If this manager gets them promoted, are they back in the spin cycle again?
Getting a manager that is not that you don't get Big Sam because I don't know if he's got any bigger, but he's not saving you at this point, I don't think, from where you're at.
No.
Do you just get a manager who you almost are okay with next year managing you in the championship? You do the Norwich thing you're talking about, Alex.
You have to. And if Russell Martin is not that guy, okay, fine, he's not that guy. But also, like, how long has he been? He hasn't been at Saints that long. So, like, I don't know. That's the hard part. I understand it's a results business and you got to do something at some point. But it is tough. It's like, is it going to get any better? Because whoever you hire is going to get you relegated. So does a manager want that stink if you don't have the buy-in from the board? It's tough.
Nope.
It's tough.
I mean, does it differ, like, for you, for example, Glenn, like what Wolves should get versus what Southampton should get? Because either way, I would rather get somebody who's going to kind of be a bit more long-term and not get a guy who's just going to, I mean, anybody can go over there and be like, let's play the low block, guys, defend for your lives kind of a thing. And then next year, you're going to have to get somebody else. I think even for Wolves, don't you want somebody who's going to be able to get you points one way or the other using your squad?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I do think both teams are in very different places despite their position in the league. Wolves do have quality in their squad, and I think, unfortunately, when you look at Southampton player to player, compare them to the other 19 teams, they're probably the weakest squad in the league, I'd say. There's not a huge amount of players who I see being, picked up by other clubs if and when they go down. It's like it's a squad that really is in that kind of weird liminal space between the Championship and the Premier League. That's where this squad kind of occupies. They're just like, they're in Nowhereville. Like they'd probably get promoted, this team, if they were below, probably. But like, I don't see them staying up no matter what kind of football you play. I have some sympathy for Russell Martin because, he has a philosophy and principles and he's sticking to it. And like, that's the argument to support him. But at the same time, it's kind of square pegs round holes because this isn't a squad, especially in a league that's as cutthroat as the Premier League. Harwood Bellis, Bednarek, Manning, Walker-Peters, like these aren't defenders who you look at and you think, yeah, they can play through presses and they can be confident with the ball at their feet. Like, yeah, it's not a great team. I mean, Tyler Dibbling, who's been one of the rare sparks of joy for them this season. I will say there were two funny things from this game. One, there was a Saints fan who was delayed getting to the grounds. They got to the train station, it was 1-0. They got to the gate, it was 2-0, and they sat down for the third. So that they had a really bad weekend. And
the Homer Simpson dad thing, just walk in and walk out.
Exactly, grab your coat, exactly, and leave again. And my second favorite thing, and I'm sure we probably all saw this, was you could tell, I think, that Martin, pressures got to him. With him and O'Neill, with the Wolves fighting, that is a moment of real fracture and rupture for this team. You can't have fights 1 week, let alone 2 in a row. You cannot lose control of your players like that. And the moment we had for Russell Martin this week was he kind of, somewhat understandably stormed off to the dressing room a little bit earlier. And when he walked off and left the touchline, it was 4-0. And somebody had to go in, one of the players had to go in and tell him that they were 5-0 down and it wasn't 4-0 anymore. So it was this kind of like shambolic game that becomes funny. It becomes a comedy because it's so bad. I would just say if you're 5-0 down at halftime, yes, against a team like Spurs, who have a wealth of attacking talent, and you look at the score sheet, and there's some great quality players in there. But as you said, Jake, the ease in which Tottenham scored some of those goals, like some of them were just straight balls kind of down the middle. Like it was just like they didn't have to be particularly creative or incisive to score so many goals. I think the problem with both Wolves and Southampton is it seemed kind of irredeemably broken what was happening. So either you make a decision now, or you kind of wait until when? Like January, and then fire him then when you're like 15 points adrift? I think a combination of for Southampton, you're playing against hard teams, you're playing a system that doesn't work, the quality of your players aren't good enough. They had a perfect storm of conditions that meant like it wasn't working. And I understand why both managers this weekend have been let go. And I think Leicester is slightly different because they were doing comparatively better in the league. And we think with Leicester, there were off-the-field issues that were contributing to that. You look at the way, Saints and Wolves have played. The way Saints and Wolves have played the last few weeks, it seemed pretty hopeless.
Yeah, in some ways, it's probably not a bad time to fire somebody. Give them a couple of weeks with the squads. Tell us what you need. We'll go try to get it in January, like within certain boundaries and stuff like that. So maybe timing-wise, it's not bad. I don't know. I find it really hard to have sympathy for Martin. I mean, you can have principle. I know what you mean, Alex, but I mean, I can go around and be like, I want to be in shampoo commercials. But after a while, you got to realize ain't happening. You put the hat on and move on. You know what I mean? It's just so like what you wish and what you have are going to be two different things. You're going to be able to adjust. And I don't think he adjusted at all. It's almost like he doubled down and was doing it for spite. It felt like over there. Chelsea 2, Brentford 1. Jay couldn't join us this week, but he did send this, and then we'll get your take on it before we jump onto Tonali's picks real quick.
Chelsea deserving victors against Brentford 2-1.
Yeah, that's enough said, though. But no, I'm just kidding. Hold on.
Brentford defended far better than I expected. Made it difficult for Chelsea. Our XG was 2.3, I think it was, but on 26 shots, they were really very low XG chances that we were limited to for the majority of the game. Mark Cucurella comes up with the first goal. The shocker to me, he often looks like he's going to get a nosebleed that far forward. But I think we were deserving winners. The better side and definitely one of the top sides in the league at the moment, if not the top side in the league, which is worrying to say. Despite what Maresca's claimed, we likely are in a title race. Realistically, though, Liverpool still have a game in hand, and they're probably going to be 4 or 5 points clear in the next few weeks. But Chelsea are playing before Liverpool play again. So while we'll have played 2 games more, we do have the opportunity to go top, which is concerning. But rewarding for the football we've played. I think Maresca's done incredibly well, and this is the fruits of that labour. Mark Cucurella will not be with us for the next game. That was confusing, what happened at the end of the game. But I guess sent off for something he said or did. He's a little bit of a shit, so what can you say? Interesting to see how we'll shape up. We won't have a lot of players. We've got quite a few injuries and a suspension to Cucurella. Thankfully, we're playing Everton, so we should still be able to get the job done.
Those are famous last words, man. Pretty rich for a Chelsea fan to complain about injuries and depth of squad after they spent like $9 billion on like 85 guys, and they have to have like 3 locker rooms for them. But Jay isn't here, so I'm not going to go at him. Glenn, what did you make of that game?
Mr. Mudryk, who decided to take performance-enhancing drugs and did not improve his performance. Probably the worst.
He lost his hair, though. I really blame the drugs for that.
Usually when you take drugs, it makes you play better. Barry Bonds and football players, but Mudryk, I don't know. He got worse. So he needs to sue his doctor, whoever gave him those.
Yeah.
What happened there? Just
an
away game?
It was another away game, another loss. Surprise. Hey, we played really well. It was a really good game. Chelsea were good value for their win. As Jamie said, plenty of shots on target. I can't argue with the final score. I do think we set up really well and we frustrated them. We switched to 5 at the back. We brought on Mazuruzlev as our right wing back. He hasn't had much game time recently, and he was a little bit rusty with the ball, unfortunately. But that formation, the deeper 5-3-2, was definitely helpful. Player I've kept my eye on recently is Yarmouk, a very young, he's young 20s, Ukrainian midfielder. He looks brilliant. He is competing against players like Enzo, Caicedo. I thought it was one of Caicedo's best games for Chelsea. I thought he was exceptional, and they looked like a $200 million pairing in that kind of deeper lying midfield. Brilliant. But for Yarmouk to go up against them and go toe-to-toe and not be outplayed or played around, brilliant. It was great. Norgard is back. I mean, he's kind of our Rodri from a Brentford perspective. Like, if he's not in the holding midfield, like against Villa, Shay, like against you guys very recently, which I've had to delete that from my mind. We didn't have Norgard, and you guys, Morgan Rogers is just walking through our defense. Like, he is crucial to what we do. So to have him back was great. And yeah, we made them work for it. This is a free scoring Chelsea side. This is probably the most informed team in the league. They're exciting to watch for the neutral, which is always good. They have some of the best creative players in the league. They have some of the best wingers in the league. Even with Neto suspended, they had Sancho and Madueke on the wing. I mean, there's two great wingers, especially when they're in form. We kept Palmer quiet, which was great, because I think I remember saying on the preview for this last week, I was dreading Cole Palmer. running, pulling the strings for our midfield. And you know what? We kept him pretty quiet. And we stayed into the game until very late, and we forced Sanchez into a couple of great saves. There's a Norgard volley that he made this remarkable save to. Flying, was going top corner, brilliant save. And what I love about this is we kept ourselves in the game until the final second, right? You think it's game over when Jackson gets that second goal. He missed an open goal earlier, and yet he converts his hardest chance. Classic Nicholas Jackson. You think it's game over at 2-0, but we don't give up, right? That's what I love about this Brentford team. A little bit like Liverpool at the weekend. It's a bit of an adverse situation. You're 10 men down, or we're 2-0 down away from home, but we don't give up. And it was a great goal from Brian Abumo as well. Like, what a finish. And we made it nervous for them. And they had to work for every single second. I think it was like 8 minutes at a time. They had to work for 98 minutes to beat us by 1 goal. And yes, it's another away loss. We've got 1 point on the road. We've kept 1 clean sheet home and away this entire season. But honestly, when you look at squads, you look at money, for us to go to an informed, exceptionally gifted Chelsea team and only lose by 1 goal, I can't complain. And Mark Flecken had another great game in goal. He's been, we've talked about this before on the show, like whether he's a weak link. And I think he's really demonstrating that he's an asset more than a vulnerability this season. So yeah, really positive. It's just hard to be ultimately happy when you lose, right? It's hard to ultimately find satisfaction in that, but performance and tactically, really impressive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of goalies, by the way, that Martinez save, Shay, is freaking redunculous. I can't stand the dude. I find him very annoying, but that save is just freaking obnoxious. Just obnoxious. We've seen enough of Jay. So let's take a look at this over here. Wrong screen. Liverpool on top, Chelsea in the race, 2 points, but the game in hand for Liverpool. Arsenal and their corner kicks are 30 points in third. Forest is fourth. Who would have thought that? And Bournemouth, actually, we did skip that game. Bournemouth won, West Ham won. Enes Ünal, the Turkish dude, who I hope gets more minutes because Turkey can use a striker, and we need the number 9. So if that kid's really turns out to be what he's promising to be, we might actually have a good team after all with Kenan Yıldız and Arda Güler and stuff. I don't want to get the mouth watering yet. We'll wait till what NS does first. But Bournemouth is 6th. Villa is now 7th. Fulham 8th in there. And then Tottenham 10. United, despite all their glory and the resurgence, are 13th. And when we look at the bottom, no manager is 20th. No manager is 19th. Ipswich, that was like a 6-point game there probably for them. Yeah. And then Rude's Leicester City is over there. Looks like I said, it's hard to see Southampton coming out of this, but stranger things have happened, I guess. I just don't see it because I think mainly for the reasons you guys all said, the team is not there. It's not just a manager issue. I don't think the squad is there. And people to make too big of a deal of a January transfer window. You don't build a team in January. You can get a couple of missing pieces, but that's about it. You can add depth and stuff like that, but you're not saving your season over there. Well, it is time, people. It is time for Tonali's picks for next week. Where would Tonali put his money? Jake, we will start with you for this one. You and Tonali at the stand. Where are you guys putting the money?
That is a great question.
I wasn't on. Is a good game.
I wasn't on the week following my Nottingham Forest pick over Manchester United, so I just want to take my plaudits real quick now that I am here. I'm not going to go against them again this week, although I don't back Manchester United to beat anyone except Man City, obviously. So let me go. I just want to have him eat his words because we have it recorded and for posterity. So I'm going to go with Everton getting a result against Chelsea, just so we can replay that back next week.
Yeah. You gotta put her in a loop. Actually, that's a good pick over there. Shay, what do you have? Because I think I was gonna go that way too, but Shay, what do you have?
I'll go a little crazy. I'm gonna go Palace beating Arsenal. I just don't think they're gonna do it. Like I said, all I can score is off the corner kicks. I can see Palace pulling this one off. I'm going to go 2-1 Crystal Palace.
See, Allen should be there to defend themselves, but what is he going to say? They do only score from corner kicks. So and hence he's not here. He's resting. So he's from the excitement of that Everton Arsenal game, he's catching his breath. So you're going with Crystal Palace getting a win or getting points out of
Crystal
Arsenal?
Palace getting the win. They're going to pull it off.
Getting the win, going all the way. And they're on a high actually after this away win. Alex, what do we have?
Yeah, I think plucky underdog going on the road. City beats Villa. No, I think yeah, as much as it pains me, my heart wants to pick Ipswich to get a result against Newcastle. I had Leicester getting something against Newcastle last week, and that didn't go well. And I think Newcastle are good enough that they kind of push through teams like this. But the real one would be Brentford beating Forest. I think that the 13th to 3rd or whatever it is like 5 points gap. So it'd be a big upset in terms of table position, but like realistically, it's pretty close. And like we've talked about, Brentford plays so well at Legoland that I think,
you guys should get Arteta over there.
Glenn,
who do you have?
Just love how much Alex enjoys watching Brentford every weekend. It's
Oh, God.
so nice to hear.
Kill
Your
me.
second favorite team. You need a half and half. We'll mail you a half and half. Score.
Oh, please. If you mail me one, I'll put it on for the podcast.
I mean, Alex is the reason you're here, Glenn, because he talks shit. So we went and
I
seen
did.
another
I
Brentford
talked-
fan.
Find the clip.
last year. We need to
Track me down.
Somebody find the clip.
Looking at tonight's picks, there's loads. There's a great week for it. We've had a couple of weeks where there's been like a lot of even teams.
Yeah.
Like there's loads of upsets. I'm gonna go Ipswich getting something positive against Newcastle. Newcastle are so inconsistent, especially away from home. Yeah, players like Isak, if they show up, can deal with Ipswich. But I think Ipswich at home, they need to try and make that a fortress as best they can in terms of atmosphere, which they do. And yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Ipswich get even a win against Newcastle, just because Newcastle is so inconsistent. And St. James's is an awful place to go. I'm dreading it in the cup tomorrow, but they're just so ropey away from home. So let's see if they turn up. Let's see if Gordon, Isak, and co can play, at a game that they should win on paper.
And that's another thing. Like some of these teams do have a tough matchup midweek, and that will affect how they turn out over the weekend. Man, between Crystal Palace and Everton, I am really torn, but I do have faith in Everton getting something. I see it in the chat as well, but I do think Everton might get something against Chelsea. I mean, going back to what you were saying with Glenn about Palmer and stuff like that, I just don't see why more teams don't do that and go old school, baby, like 80s soccer, go find the other team's best player and, put a handcuff on him next to your butcher and then just play 10v10. And I think you have a good shot against Chelsea if you do that. So I think a lot more teams should probably take a page out of, that's what Liverpool did with Curtis Jones, and Palmer was non-existent that game. And when you take Palmer out, you have a lot better shots at like going at him. But Everton hopefully will get something against them, because that will really be a big boost against going against Spurs the next day. I am worried about that game, Jake. What is your prediction for that game, by the way?
Oh, lots of goals. But I can say that as a prediction for any Spurs game. I think we put up a valiant fight, but I think we lose. I think Jota scores against us. I think him coming back is going to be huge for you guys. You saw it already, him coming off the bench. He was, one of your best players when he came on, and I think we lose in a semi-high scoring affair, maybe a 3-2 scoreline.
That's interesting when a Spurs fan considers a 3-2 game, by the way, as a semi-high scoring, not really high scoring.
Well, it's not 4-3 like the Chelsea
goals.
game,
Shane,
the rookie numbers,
Always play the over when you're like betting on Spurs. Tonali always plays the over. Shay, City game, what's the prediction?
I mean, seeing how we blew a game, the Saturday, I don't know. Hopefully Duran starts and he turns full Captain Chaos, and we just keep piling on the misery to Pep, because this is the time to take advantage of this. I think we've only beat them once like the last 4 years, so I need a win. Maybe Jack starts at home and we whoop his ass. Just like, hey, you want to come back and return to your glory days? Because like on Twitter the last few days, I've seen random Twitter accounts saying, look what Pep did to Jack, and just sucked all the life out of him. I was like, yep, I could have told you this. Thanks for the $100 million. We appreciate it because it's rebuilt the club, but it's time for him to come back home if he wants to.
Come back for 20 million or something like that.
Yeah.
Alex, Southampton at home. I don't know if they will have a new manager by then. They're probably on interim action. Will they have the new manager smell, or they just don't have enough to keep up with Fulham?
No, I think it'll be Fulham don't keep clean sheets. So I think it'll be 3-1. 3-1 would be a nice result. I'll take it. I think that's what heart says again. I think my head says a squeaky bum 2-1 because that's just the way Fulham are. But I don't think Southampton can keep up. Yeah, 3-1.
Brentford, Forest, especially after this. Is Forest playing tomorrow? Are they in the cup still?
Oh, good question. Let's see. I'm not sure. No, I don't think they are.
No,
Looks like the next game's against us.
That could be not a good thing for you, but
no, it's true. It's true. I mean, you look at the way the Forest performed. I watched the second half against Villa. I mean, what an atmosphere, what a game, and they're the surprise package of the season. I think a lot of people would agree. I don't think anyone expected them to be fourth or even probably top 10, top 8 this season. They're going to be really tough. And the thing is with Forest is they're good defensively and going forward. They've got players that can hurt you. Gibbs White, Elanga, Wood. I mean, he's probably been the surprise package of goal scorers in the league this season. And he's exactly the kind of player who Brentford hate. We concede most of our chances centrally. And he's the player that just sits in that area and he scores goals. And he had that one chalked off very, very controversially at the weekend. I'll be positive and say 2-1. Brentford, it's one of those games, I think I might have said this for the Chelsea one where you kind of you simulate it 100 times and you get a stack of different results. Either team could win it. If we were away from home, I'd say, probably a comfortable, probably a Forest win. But because we're at the Fortress G-Tech, we're going to score goals. It won't be 0-0. Let's entertain the fans as usual and maybe sneak a win. A draw wouldn't be the worst result because they're just a really good team this season. I think we've got to stop underestimating what they can do because they're good from front to back.
I mean, we know personally they play good away from home, but hopefully the boys will play. I mean, will hopefully heavily rotate tomorrow. I don't know if Spurs will be able to as heavily. Do you expect him to rotate, by the way, for your guys' cup game, Jake?
Not heavily. We don't have the depth to do that right now.
Well, that's true, I guess. Yeah.
So it'll be like two changes probably.
Yeah, so that's kind of like an advantage Liverpool as well, because I do expect a lot of rotation tomorrow, but it'll be a tough game. But I'm going with what we like to call Timuchin special on American Scots, or the 3-1 win, hopefully. And then we continue our ways, and hopefully Everton gets something so we can talk to Jay next week. But hey, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks to all those joining us. Give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Spread the word. We are almost at 1,000, 990 something. So we're hoping to get to that. The goal was Christmas. So give us a Christmas gift. Go freaking subscribe. Or get somebody else to subscribe, even better. But have a great week, everybody. And we'll see you guys next week. Take care.